Why was the radio so quiet? That silence pressed heavier on her than the weight of her own gear. She crouched in the ruined frame of a building, rifle tight against her chest, helmet tilted just enough to catch the hiss of static. Nothing. No voices. No call signs. No one left to answer. She breathed once, twice. The air tasted of dust and smoke, thick with the sour burn of diesel. It clung to her throat like grief. She adjusted the strap digging into her shoulder. Everyone else had fallen. That truth wasn't supposed to feel real. She had replayed it in her head, denying it with each heartbeat. Maybe someone was still out there. Maybe the silence was just bad comms, a jammed signal, but deep down she knew. She'd watched them go down one by one, faces she had trained with, laughed with, bled with, and now just gone. Her name was Captain Adriana Cole, but names didn't matter out here, not anymore. She wasn't a rank, a number, a title. She was the last echo of a broken unit in hostile ground. The mission hadn't ended, not yet, and that meant she couldn't stop. Her hands trembled as she changed the magazine, not from fear, though fear was always there, but from anger she refused to let surface. She'd seen what anger did to people. It made them reckless, and reckless soldiers didn't live long. The ground shook once, distant mortar fire. She froze, waiting for the follow-up. A scream of metal, a whistle, the gut punch of an impact, but nothing came closer. Not this time. She checked her watch. 2 hours since contact. 2 hours since her team had been alive. 2 hours since she had last heard Rodriguez swearing at the comms, or Miller's nervous laugh, or Sergeant James steadying them all with just a word. Now their voices lived only inside her head. She whispered them back, as if saying their names kept them tethered to her. Rodriguez, Miller, James. Her throat caught on the last one. She promised James, promised all of them, she would get the intel out. That was the mission. The SAT drive in her pack held names, locations, plans. If the enemy got to it, hundreds, maybe thousands would die. Their deaths would mean nothing if she didn't finish what they had started. But there was something she hadn't told them. Not James. Not anyone. She had carried a second weight into this mission, one not written into orders. And now, with no one left to share it, that secret sat heavier on her chest than the armor itself. She pressed her hand against the pocket under her vest, felt the hard edge of a folded photograph. Not now, she told herself, not here. Her boots crunched against shattered glass as she rose. The building's walls had been gutted by shelling, open to the gray sky above. Sunlight slanted through smoke, casting the streets in a haze that shimmered like heat. The city was silent, eerily so. No voices, no movement, just the occasional creak of settling rubble. She moved low, steps controlled, rifle steady. Each corner she cleared with a glance, every shadow a possible death. She didn't think about home. She didn't think about tomorrow. Survival lived in seconds, not hours. A memory slipped in anyway. James pulling her aside before they'd stepped off. "You don't have to prove anything, Cole. Not to me, not to anyone." His voice had been firm, steady. "You've already done more than enough." She hadn't answered him. Couldn't. Because she wasn't here for recognition. She wasn't here to prove anything. She was here because she couldn't let the people she had lost before, long before this mission, fade into silence. Her earpiece crackled suddenly. She dropped to one knee, heart thudding. The sound was faint, broken, a voice or maybe just static. She pressed her gloved fingers to the comms unit, straining to hear. "Cole, you copy?" Her breath caught, it was faint, distorted, but it was James, it had to be. "James, say again," she whispered, desperate. The reply fractured, scattering into static, then silence. Her chest tightened. She closed her eyes. That wasn't possible. She'd seen him fall, seen the blood, the stillness. Yet for a second, just a second, hope clawed its way back into her chest. She rose and pushed forward, faster now, though every instinct screamed caution. If there was even a chance, just one chance, that someone else was alive, she couldn't ignore it. The streets narrowed, the wrecks of burned-out vehicles forming jagged corridors. She passed a rusted swing set half buried in debris, its chain swaying gently though no wind stirred. A child's shoe lay abandoned near the curb, dirt ground into its faded pink fabric. She forced herself not to look at it too long. Focus, mission, move. A shadow flickered at the edge of her vision. She froze, crouching behind a wall. Her finger slid to the trigger. Footsteps light, careful, someone trained. Her pulse hammered, enemy, survivor. She steadied her breathing, leaned just enough to catch sight. A man, beard matted, uniform torn, his weapon raised, his eyes scanning. Not hers, not her unit, but not local militia either. She hesitated. The rules were simple, trust no one. Out here, friend and foe wore the same colors of dust and blood. But when his gaze swept past her hiding spot, she saw it, the flicker of fear in his eyes. Not the kind that made men dangerous, the kind that made them human. She whispered just loud enough to carry, friendly. His rifle snapped toward her. For a heartbeat, she thought he'd fire. Then recognition, relief, his shoulders sagged, he lowered the weapon. Cole, his voice rasped, dry and broken. Her throat closed. It was James, it was Miller. Alive. Against every impossible odd, he was standing. She rushed forward, steadying him as his knees nearly buckled. His skin burned with fever under her grip, blood soaking through the torn fabric of his side. "You're alive," she whispered, disbelief cracking her voice. "Barely," he muttered, forcing a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Guess I didn't get the memo." Relief warred with sorrow in her chest. She wanted to hold onto the moment, to the miracle of his survival. But his weight against her told the truth. He wouldn't last long, not without help. His eyes found hers, sharp despite the pain. "The drive, you still got it." She nodded. "Good, then we finish this. Doesn't matter what happens to me, you get it out." She swallowed hard, wanted to argue, wanted to promise she'd save him too. But the look in his eyes told her he already knew the answer. She adjusted his arm over her shoulder, bearing his weight. Each step forward felt like carrying both his body and the memory of those already gone. As they moved, Miller's voice broke the silence. "You remember that night back at base, the poker game? Rodriguez swore he had a winning hand." A weak chuckle. "Man had the worst bluff I've ever seen." She smiled despite the ache in her chest. "He was terrible." "Yeah, but you let him win anyway." She didn't answer. He was right. And she'd done it because sometimes keeping someone's pride mattered more than the cards on the table. Now, she wondered what small dignity she could give Miller in return. The road stretched ahead, endless and empty. Somewhere beyond extraction, or at least a chance at it, waited. But with every step, she knew the truth she couldn't say aloud. She was carrying more than just Miller. She was carrying their story, all of it, all of them. And she was determined it wouldn't die here in the silence of a forgotten street. Not while she still drew breath. How far could one broken man walk? That was the question tearing at her as she half-carried Miller down the fractured street. His boots dragged. His breaths came in short, shallow bursts. Every few steps, his weight grew heavier. She told herself to slow down, conserve his strength. But every minute out here was a gamble. The longer they lingered, the closer the enemy would be. She could almost feel unseen eyes watching from shattered windows, from doorways blackened by fire. "Stop," Miller rasped, yanking at her shoulder. She crouched with him, lowering his weight against the crumbling wall of what had once been a storefront. The sign above was shattered, letters half melted by flame. Inside, shelves sagged under ash. The stink of something long dead lingered in the air. "You can't," he swallowed, his lips gray. "Drag me the whole way, I'll slow you down." She shook her head. "Not leaving you." A cough ripped through him, doubling his body in pain. When he leaned back, she saw the spreading crimson on his uniform, not just from his side, his chest too. Miller saw the look in her eyes and laughed hoarsely. Guess you didn't notice before. Always thought I was good at hiding things. Her throat closed. He wasn't going to make it. Deep down, she knew, but she couldn't admit it. Not here. Not when the silence still carried the faint possibility of hope. He caught her wrist, grip weak but insistent. Cole, don't waste me. His eyes burned with something fiercer than the pain. You remember why we came here. Don't let them win. She bit back the sting behind her eyes. You think I don't remember? Then prove it. For a long moment she just knelt there. The city was still, the air heavy with smoke. A dog barked once in the distance, then silence again. Her heart pounded against her ribs. She wanted to scream at him, wanted to rage against the cruelty of it all, but rage wouldn't save him. Rage wouldn't finish the mission. She pulled his arm over her shoulder again. We move until you can't. His laugh was bitter, cut with blood, stubborn as hell. They moved again. 1 block, 2. The sun dipped lower, shadows stretching long and sharp across the cracked pavement. Her body ached, every muscle burning under his weight, but she didn't let go. At the 3rd block she spotted it, a flicker of movement ahead. She froze, pulling Miller into cover behind a half-collapsed wall. Voices, distant, male, speaking in clipped tones she didn't recognize, not English. Miller stiffened against her. His lips formed the word silently, enemy. She raised her rifle, sighting down the broken street. 3 figures, armed, moving slowly, scanning the ruins. Her breath slowed. Her finger hovered near the trigger. But Miller's hand gripped her arm, shook his head. His lips brushed close to her ear. Not now, too risky. She knew he was right. 3 against 1, burdened with him. Suicide. Still, every part of her screamed to act, to strike, to bleed out the fury inside her chest. But no, the mission, always the mission. She waited, still as stone, until the men passed out of sight. Only then did she let her breath go. They pressed on, moving deeper into the husk of the city. Every step was agony for Miller, but he didn't complain. He just leaned heavier against her, each breath a fight. At last they reached what looked like shelter, a church, its roof half-collapsed, its stained glass shattered into shards across the floor. She helped him inside, lowering him gently against a pew that still stood. The silence inside was different, heavy but not hostile. Dust floated in the light through the broken windows, dancing like ghosts. Miller leaned his head back, eyes half-closed. Funny, huh, us in a place like this. She glanced around, the cracked stone, the ruined altar. She had grown up avoiding places like this, never comfortable with the weight of silence they carried. Yet now it felt almost protective. She pulled a medkit from her pack, opened it with shaking hands, gauze, morphine, tools of desperation. When she pressed the gauze against his wound, he hissed but didn't push her away. His eyes locked on hers, steady. You ever think about it? He asked suddenly. Think about what? Home, what you'd do if you ever made it back. The question froze her. She thought of the photo tucked in her pocket, the one she hadn't dared take out, the secret she hadn't told anyone. But she didn't answer him, not yet. Instead, she said, You'll tell me yours first. His lips curved into the faintest smile. Easy, porch swing, cold beer, watching my niece ride her bike down the street, nothing fancy. His voice cracked. Just quiet. Her chest ached, because she knew he'd never see it, and because she knew she couldn't tell him the truth about her own dream, not without breaking something fragile between them. So she just smiled faintly. Sounds perfect. His eyelids fluttered, his breathing slowed. She thought he might be slipping under, but then his voice rasped again. Cole, promise me when it's over, you'll tell them about us, about all of us. Don't let it die here. Her throat tightened. She couldn't answer right away. The words stuck like glass in her chest. Finally she whispered, I promise. His hand loosened. His head slumped slightly against the wood. Sleep claimed him. She sat there in the dim light, rifle across her lap, eyes scanning the shadows. Every creak of the old church made her grip the weapon tighter, but nothing came. Not yet. Her mind drifted. Against her will, she pulled the photograph from her pocket. The edges were worn, the image faded. A woman, smiling, hair tied back, holding a little boy in her arms, both looking at the camera like they believed the future was still bright. Her fingers trembled on the photo. Her chest ached with something deeper than pain. She whispered to the empty air, "I'm not letting you fade." A sound cut through her reverie, boots, not Miller's, outside, approaching. She shoved the photo back, raised the rifle, and moved to the broken doorway. Shadows shifted across the rubble. 3 silhouettes, not the same patrol, different, closer. Her pulse hammered. She glanced back at Miller, unconscious on the pew, vulnerable. If they found him, if they found her, it would be over. She pressed her back against the stone, waited, steady breaths, slow. The voices drew closer, language harsh, clipped. Their footsteps echoed against broken stone. One man stepped inside. His boots crunched glass. His rifle swept the pews. Her finger tightened on the trigger. 1 second, 2. The man turned and their eyes locked. He froze, she fired. The shot cracked like thunder inside the ruined church. The man fell. The other 2 shouted, rushing inside. She fired again, ducked behind stone. Bullets ripped through the air, splintering wood. Dust filled her lungs. Her mind went blank. No fear, no hesitation, just survival. She moved, fired, shifted. One man dropped, blood pooling against the altar. The last charged forward. She felt the heat of his breath as he raised his weapon. Her rifle jammed. Time froze. In that heartbeat, she thought of everything: James, Rodriguez, Miller, the photo in her pocket, the weight of all their stories. She drew her sidearm, fired once. The man's eyes widened. He collapsed at her feet. Silence. Her hands shook as she reloaded, heart racing, ears ringing from the gunfire. Behind her, Miller stirred, groaned. What happened? She forced her voice steady. It's over. But even as she said it, she knew the truth. It wasn't over, not even close. Because the shots would draw others. And when they came, she would have to choose: fight with him at her side or leave him to finish the mission alone. The promise in her chest burned hotter than the gunpowder in the air. Everyone else had fallen, but she was still standing, and their story was not going to die here. Not while she had breath left to give. What choice could she live with, saving one man or saving countless others? That question gnawed at her as she sat in the ruined church, Miller's ragged breathing filling the silence between her thoughts. Her body still trembled from the fight. The acrid sting of gunpowder hung in the air, thick and metallic. The pews were splintered, the altar scarred with blood. 3 bodies lay sprawled in the dust, their lifeless eyes staring at nothing. She told herself she should move, that staying here was suicide. The gunfire would draw more. But still, she stayed kneeling by Miller, patching his wounds with what little gauze remained, as if holding the moment together with trembling hands could keep everything else from falling apart. His face was pale, lips cracked. Sweat soaked his hair. When his eyes fluttered open, she saw the pain burning through him like fire. "You should go," he whispered. "No." He tried to laugh, but it broke into a cough. "You don't get it. I'm already dead weight. Every second you waste on me." Her hand pressed against his chest, firm, cutting him off. "Don't say it." He stared at her, lips trembling as though he wanted to argue, but he didn't. His eyes softened, and that was worse than his words, because it meant he knew. She looked away, forcing her focus on the pack at her feet. The sat drive was still there, cold, silent, heavy as a gravestone. If she left him here, if she walked away now, she might get it out, might succeed. His sacrifice wouldn't be wasted. But if she stayed, if she carried him, she risked everything. Her hands clenched. Nails dug into her palms through the gloves. Her jaw tightened until her teeth ached. Because the truth was, it wasn't just the mission. It was him. The way he had laughed at Rodriguez's jokes. The way he'd stayed steady when she doubted herself. The way he'd told her before every op, "You got this, Cole." And deeper still, the way he reminded her of someone she had already lost. Someone she had promised herself she'd never let fade. She reached into her vest pocket. Fingers brushed the worn photograph. The woman's smile. The boy's wide eyes. Her throat ached. Not yet, not now. She shoved the photo back, stood, and scanned the ruined church again. Her training cut through the fog of emotion like a blade. They had maybe 5 minutes before the next patrol would sweep this sector. Maybe less. She bent, slid her arms under Miller, and pulled him up. He groaned in pain, teeth gritted. "We're moving," she told him. "Cole, don't waste your breath arguing." His arms slung over her shoulder, they staggered out into the fading light. The sky was turning amber, smoke catching the glow like dying embers. Long shadows stretched across the ruined streets. She moved quickly, head low, eyes scanning every rooftop, every alley. The weight of him slowed her, but she didn't falter. For blocks only silence, then voices ahead. She froze, pulling him into cover behind a toppled bus, peered around the corner. 5 men, armed, searching. Too many. Miller's breath hitched. He met her eyes, shook his head, whispered, "Go." She shook hers fiercely. "Not leaving you." But he pressed his hand to her wrist. His voice cracked with urgency. "If they catch you with me, it's over. Don't let it end here." Her chest burned, because he wasn't wrong. She looked back at the men, closer now, weapons sweeping, voices growing louder. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She slid Miller down gently against the bus. His eyes widened, panicked. "Cole. Stay quiet, stay alive." Her voice trembled. "I'll draw them off, then I'll come back." He grabbed her sleeve, desperate. "You won't." Her heart cracked, but she pulled free, checked her rifle, steadied her breath. Then she moved. She slipped through the shadows, boots whispering against rubble, kept low, circled wide until she was behind them. One deep breath. Then she hurled a chunk of broken brick across the street. It clattered against metal with a sharp clang. The men spun, weapons raised, barking orders. She moved again, quick and silent. Another rock, another noise. Their formation broke, splitting. Her chest pounded. She didn't need to fight them, just needed to pull them away from Miller. Step by step, she lured them deeper into the ruins. When they passed out of sight of the bus, she pressed herself against the wall, barely daring to breathe. Footsteps thundered past, voices echoed, then silence again. She exhaled slowly, relief washed over her. But only for a moment. Because when she returned to the bus, Miller was gone. Her heart dropped into her stomach. She scanned frantically, eyes darting over rubble, alleys, rooftops. Nothing. She crouched, pressed her hand to the ground where he had been. Fresh smears of blood, drag marks. Her chest tightened. The enemy hadn't passed him by. They had found him, taken him. Her throat closed. She wanted to scream, to fire every round she had until the city itself shook. Instead, she closed her eyes, forced herself to breathe. Because if she broke now, if she chased blindly, she would lose everything. Him, the drive, the mission, all of it. Her hands shook as she reloaded, checked her gear. Somewhere out there, Miller was in enemy hands. And if they realized who he was, if they realized what he carried, they'd break him. They'd bleed him for answers. Her jaw clenched. She wouldn't let that happen. Not to him, not to any of them. She set off into the shadows, following the trail of blood and drag marks. Her boots were silent, her breath steady, her rifle ready. The city loomed around her, broken and hollow. The sky deepened to red, then purple. Night would come soon, and with it more danger. But in her chest, the fire burned hotter. because now it wasn't just about finishing the mission. It was about redemption. It was about not losing one more person to the silence. She whispered to the photo in her pocket, to the ghosts in her memory, to Miller's fatting voice. I won't let you fade. Not now, not ever. How far into darkness was she willing to go? That thought followed her as the sky deepened to black, the last traces of daylight bleeding into smoke. The city seemed to shift with nightfall, its silence sharper, its ruins heavier with menace. Adriana Cole moved like a shadow, low, careful, rifle tight against her chest, eyes adjusting to the dim glow of fire smoldering in the distance. She followed the trail, faint streaks of blood, scuffed earth, drag marks cutting through dust. Each step forward was a reminder Miller was still alive, for now. But the deeper she followed, the more her stomach tightened, because each step also pulled her closer to them. She crouched at the edge of a square. Once it had been a marketplace, the air filled with voices, laughter, life. Now only skeletons of stalls remained, wood charred black, fruit crates smashed into splinters. The faint stench of rot lingered. And there light, flickering through shattered windows of a building across the square, shouts in the distance, laughter. Her grip on the rifle tightened. She slid into cover, eyes scanning. She saw them, enemy fighters, at least 8 of them, gathered around a fire inside the ruined structure. Their weapons leaned casually against walls, their voices carried through broken glass. She couldn't make out the words, but the tones were clear, cruel amusement. Her stomach twisted. She moved closer, one step at a time, hugging shadow until her line of sight sharpened. And then she saw him. Miller bound to a chair, head slumped forward, chest heaving faintly. Blood streaked his temple, his face pale, lips cracked, but alive. Adriana's breath caught. Relief and terror collided in her chest. She pressed her forehead against the cold stone wall, forced herself to breathe, to think. 8 men, maybe more inside. She couldn't storm it, not alone. She didn't have the ammo, she didn't have the strength. Her mind raced. Every option seemed like failure. Until she saw it, the satellite drive, lying on a table near Miller. One of the men held it up, turning it over in his hands, laughing. Her blood went cold. They had it. She must have dropped it during the fight in the church, or maybe when she dragged Miller. Somehow it had slipped, and now. Her chest burned. If they cracked it, if they got what was inside, every death, every sacrifice would mean nothing. She pressed back against the wall, heart hammering. The mission or Miller? The drive or his life? The choice she'd feared since the beginning stood before her, merciless and undeniable. She closed her eyes, felt the photograph in her pocket, the woman's smile, the boy's wide eyes. Her whisper was barely audible, "Tell me what to do." Only silence answered. She forced her eyes open. The firelight flickered against Miller's face. His head lifted slightly, as though he could sense her out there in the dark. His eyes opened, dazed but searching. For a moment, she swore he looked right at her. And even across the distance, she knew what he was telling her. Finish the mission. Her throat closed, tears stung hot and angry. She had promised him, she had promised all of them, that their story wouldn't die here. But their story was more than just names on a drive. It was blood and laughter and broken promises. It was Rodriguez bluffing badly at poker, James steadying them in storms, Miller cracking jokes even while bleeding out. And it was her, standing here, forced to choose which part of that story she would let go. Her hands shook as she pulled a smoke grenade from her vest. She rolled it between her palms, breathing hard. A plan, not perfect, not safe, but something. She pulled the pin, let it hiss, then tossed it hard through the broken window. Shouts erupted inside. Confusion, voices rising, the room filled with thick gray smoke curling out the shattered glass. She moved fast, silent, through the side entrance into chaos. Men shouted in panic, coughing, stumbling. shadows blurred in the haze. She slipped past them, rifle ready, every sense screaming. Her hand found the sat drive on the table, cold, solid, salvation. She shoved it into her vest, then she turned. "Miller!" He coughed, head lolling, eyes barely open. She moved to him, hands fumbling at the ropes binding his wrists. Her knife sliced, fibers snapped. "Cole," his voice was hoarse, broken. "I'm here," she whispered. He tried to speak again, but she pressed her hand to his mouth. "Save it, we're not done yet." Footsteps pounded, a shadow loomed through the smoke. She swung her rifle up, fired once. The figure crumpled. More shouts, more shadows. She pulled Miller up, his body limp against hers. His weight was crushing, but she bore it. They staggered toward the exit. Bullets ripped through smoke, splintering wood. She ducked, shielded Miller with her body, moved faster. The night air hit her like a slap, cool, sharp. She dragged him into the alley, pressed against the wall as shouts erupted behind them. Her breath came fast, her chest heaved. But the drive was back, and Miller was alive for now. She pulled him deeper into the alley, steps unsteady. His voice rasped against her ear. "You should have left me." "Shut up," she whispered fiercely. He coughed weakly, tried to laugh, failed, still stubborn. Her jaw tightened, her arms shook from his weight, but she kept moving. Behind them, the building exploded in chaos. Men shouting, gunfire tearing into the night. Ahead, the city stretched in shadow, endless and merciless. She had the drive, she had Miller. But she knew the truth. She couldn't keep both for long. One way or another, she would have to let go. The only question was who. And when. The city wasn't silent anymore. It howled with rage. Alarms carried in shouts. Boots thundered through the ruins. The men Adriana had just robbed of their prize were spilling into the streets like unleashed hounds. And she, dragging Miller's weight against her body, rifle bouncing against her chest, heart pounding, was the quarry. Each step felt like walking deeper into a trap. The alleys twisted, narrow veins through the corpse of the city, every turn haunted by the echo of pursuit. She leaned Miller against a crumbling wall, gasping for air. Sweat streamed down her temples, stinging her eyes. He coughed, trying to lift his head. His lips were split, voice raw. "You should go." Her hand shot out, grabbing his chin, forcing his eyes to hers. "Stop. Don't waste breath on that again." "You've got what you need," he rasped. "The drive, that's all that matters." Her jaw clenched so hard it hurt. The drive pressed against her chest pocket, its weight heavier than stone. She could almost feel its pull, as if the secrets inside demanded she sacrifice him to carry them further. But when she looked at him, face pale, blood drying at his temple, eyes glassy with pain, she saw more than the mission. She saw the man who had carried her when she was the one broken, who had put himself between her and a bullet more times than she could count, who had never asked for anything in return except her stubborn refusal to quit. She pulled him upright again, slinging his arm over her shoulders. "You're not dying here, Miller, not like this." Gunfire cracked in the distance, closer now, the hunt tightening. She moved, one foot after the other, her body screaming, every muscle burning. The streets blurred into endless rubble and shadow. At every corner she froze, listening. At every sound her finger brushed the trigger. They slipped through an abandoned courtyard, weeds sprouting through broken tiles. The moon hung low, casting silver across the ruins. For a heartbeat, the world looked almost peaceful. Then a spotlight swept across the yard. She dropped, pulling Miller down with her, pressing him into the dirt. The beam passed inches away, burning the wall with white light. Voices followed, sharp, commanding, confident. They were tightening the noose. She waited, heart hammering so loud she swore they would hear it. Miller's ragged breath shook against her ear. When the light swung away, she moved again, crouched low, dragging him into cover, slipping deeper into shadow. Her mind worked furiously. The extraction point was still miles away, and with every minute the enemy spread wider. She needed somewhere to disappear, somewhere to breathe. And then she saw it, an old subway entrance. Its staircase yawning black, rails long dead, walls choked with graffiti and grime. It was risk. If they trapped her underground, there would be no way out. But above ground, the hunt was already closing. She pulled Miller toward the stairs. His legs buckled, but she forced him on, step by step, into the suffocating dark. The air below was damp, thick with mold. Her boots crunched glass. Every sound echoed too loud, bouncing back at her. She pressed him against the wall, her flashlight a dim glow she shielded with her hand. His eyes were half closed, his body trembling with fever. She crouched in front of him, her voice dropped to a whisper. "Stay with me, Miller, just stay awake." His lips moved, barely sound. "Why do you always drag the dead weight?" A broken laugh escaped her throat, a laugh edged with tears she refused to let fall. "Because you're mine to drag." His eyes softened, then closed. Panic surged, she slapped his cheek lightly. "No, not now, not here." His lids fluttered open again, barely. She leaned her forehead to his, whispering fierce and trembling. "You don't get to let go, not until I say." Above them boots clattered, voices shouted. The hunt had found the entrance. Her chest seized. She killed the light, gripped her rifle, and pressed herself between Miller and the stairs. Shadows fell across the entrance, muffled orders, then silence. The kind of silence that meant they were listening, waiting. Her finger curled on the trigger. She could feel her pulse in her teeth. Then a flare dropped down the stairwell, bursting white fire into the tunnel. She flinched, eyes seared, shadows ripping sharp across the walls. The tunnel blazed like daylight. And in that light shapes, silhouettes at the top of the stairs, guns raised. Her body moved before her mind caught up. She fired, once, twice. The first shadow fell, the second ducked. Bullets screamed down the stairwell, ricocheting off walls, sparks bursting like fireworks. She dove, covering Miller with her body, grit biting into her skin. He groaned under her weight, whispering through pain, "Go, Cole." Her eyes burned, her throat ached. She whispered back, fierce and broken, "Not without you." Grenades clinked against stone. Her breath froze. She grabbed Miller, dragging him deeper into the tunnel, every muscle tearing. Behind them, the grenades exploded, fire and smoke ripping the air, stone shattering, the tunnel quaking like the world was breaking apart. Dust choked her lungs, ears rang, but she kept moving, dragging him through the chaos deeper into black. The tunnel swallowed them, firelight fading behind. For long minutes, only her ragged breaths filled the dark. Her body trembled, vision blurring, legs barely carrying. But Miller's hand twitched against her shoulder, still alive, still here. She leaned against the cold wall, chest heaving, tears streaking through grime. The drive was safe. Miller was breathing, but the city was burning with her name, and every second pulled them closer to the breaking point. Somewhere in the dark she heard water dripping. Somewhere above, the hunters spread their net wider. She closed her eyes, whispering into the void. "God, if you're still listening, I need more than I've got." Her hand pressed against the drive. Her other gripped Miller's trembling fingers. And in that suffocating dark, she swore she heard Rodriguez's laughter, James's steady voice, all the brothers she had lost. They weren't gone, not yet, they were in her. And she would carry them, as far as her broken body could go, as far as the mission demanded, as far as Miller needed, even if it killed her. The tunnel swallowed light. Not just the flare behind them, not just the gunfire fading into silence. It swallowed everything, color, air, hope. Adriana moved by feel now, hand dragging along rough concrete, boots scraping tracks long dead. Every step forward was blind, every sound magnified. Miller sagged heavier against her, His breath rattled shallow, sweat chilling his skin. She adjusted her grip, dragging him more than carrying. His weight carved fire into her shoulders. Somewhere above, the enemy was regrouping. She could imagine their radios crackling, their maps spreading, their voices confident. They had the city, the soldiers, the manpower. She had a dying man, and a drive that could decide wars. Her body screamed to stop, to drop him, to rest, but her mind whispered the same words it had since Rodriguez's last breath. Everyone else had fallen, you don't get to. A sound broke the silence. Not boots, not shouts, something softer, a trickle. She stopped listening. Water. She moved toward it, turning corners in the dark until her hand brushed damp stone. The tunnel widened. A chamber opened. Her flashlight, dimmed to a slit, revealed black pools reflecting broken tiles. A collapsed ceiling had opened to the night sky, letting in the faintest silver of moonlight. She eased Miller down against the wall, kneeling by the pool. The water smelled metallic, but it was life. She cupped her hands, carried it to his lips. He swallowed weakly, then coughed. She tried again, gentler this time. His throat worked, a drop of strength returning. Her hands trembled, relief fragile as glass. She drank too. Cold shock slid down her throat, cutting through the fire of exhaustion. Her reflection rippled in the pool, eyes hollow, dirt masking her face, blood smearing her cheek. For a second she didn't recognize herself. She looked like one of the ghosts she carried. She pressed her forehead against her knees, shutting her eyes, just for a breath, just for a heartbeat. A whisper pulled her back. Adriana. Her head snapped up. Miller's eyes were half open, gaze unfocused. His voice was a rasp. Why are you here, really? She froze. He never asked before, never pushed. He had always taken her silence as an answer. But now, with death crowding the edges of his breath, he wanted truth. Her lips parted. Nothing came. She swallowed hard. Because they're gone, and I can't let that mean nothing. He blinked slowly. She wasn't sure if he understood. She leaned closer, voice breaking. They gave everything. Rodriguez, James, the rest. I couldn't save them. I can't even carry their names anymore without choking. But this drive, her hand pressed against her chest. This is what's left of their fight, and if I quit now, then they really died for nothing. Silence. She thought he had slipped again. Then his hand twitched, brushing hers. You're wrong, he whispered. They didn't die for this. They died for you, so you'd keep walking. Her chest ached. She bowed her head, a sob caught behind clenched teeth. His eyes closed again, but his fingers stayed tangled with hers. The chamber was still, only water dripping, her breath, his fragile pulse. For a while she let herself sit, let the silence hold them. But then a sound. A faint metallic click. She froze, not water, not stone, a deliberate sound. Her rifle came up, eyes straining. Shadows shifted at the far edge of the chamber, figures moving slow, silent. Her blood ran cold. They had followed the trail. She didn't think, she fired. The shot cracked through the chamber, echoing forever. A figure dropped, the others scattered. Bullets answered, tearing sparks off stone. She dove low, rolling behind a collapsed pillar. Miller slumped helpless, exposed against the wall. Her heart seized. She crawled, dragging him into her cover, bullets screaming inches away. Stone splintered, water rippled with each impact. She fired again. One fell. Another shouted orders in a language she half understood. They weren't rushing her. They were circling, hunting. She checked her mag, nearly empty. Her pack was lighter too, ammo running out, options thinning. Her breath shook. She pressed her back to the pillar, closed her eyes, and for a second she heard Rodriguez again. His voice calm, steady, like it had been the night he died. Don't fight their fight, make them fight yours. Her pulse slowed, her jaw set. She grabbed a shard of broken tile, skimmed it across the chamber. It clattered far to the left. Instantly, gunfire tore into the sound. She moved the other way, silent low, eyes locked on the faint moonlight from above, a gap in the collapsed ceiling, an opening. Her heart pounded. It was insane, but insanity was all that was left. She crawled back, hooked her arm under Miller, whispering sharp, "Stay with me, we're climbing." He groaned, half-conscious, but she lifted him anyway, staggering to her feet. Bullets sparked behind, voices shouting. She ran toward the rubble, toward the light. Her boots slipped on stone, body screaming with effort. She dragged him up broken slabs, one hand hauling, the other firing blind shots to keep heads down. Each step was agony, each pull tore her muscles raw, but the sky was closer, the night closer. A hand grabbed her ankle. She kicked, savage, heel-cracking bone. The man screamed, falling back. She pushed higher, fingers bleeding, lungs burning. Then air, cold night air. She shoved Miller up first, his body flopping onto dirt and grass. Then she clawed herself out, rolling into the open. The night stretched wide, a field of weeds swaying in moonlight. Beyond, the city's ruins smoldered. But no safety, no silence. Shouts rose below, echoing up the tunnel. The hunt was climbing. She collapsed beside Miller, chest heaving, vision spinning. Her hands shook so hard she could barely reload. She pressed her forehead to the earth, whispering into the grass, "Just one more mile, one more." But deep down, she knew, the enemy wasn't giving up. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not until either she was dead or the story she carried was. She looked at Miller, his face pale, lips trembling with shallow breath. And she realized something she hadn't admitted aloud. This wasn't about the drive anymore. It wasn't about orders or missions or command. It was about not letting the last piece of her family die in her arms. Even if it meant she wouldn't see another sunrise. She pulled him closer, whispered fierce through her tears, "They'll have to go through me." And in the moonlit field, surrounded by the ruins of everything she had lost, Adriana Cole prepared to make her stand. The field was too quiet, too open, too vulnerable. Adriana's eyes scanned the horizon, every blade of grass whispering danger. The moonlight turned the weeds into silver knives. Miller lay beside her, his breath shallow, chest rising and falling with fragile rhythm. She pressed her fingers against his neck, felt the faint thrum of life. Still alive, barely. Her own body trembled, not just from exhaustion but from the weight pressing in on all sides. The mission, the pursuit, the past that never left her. She pulled his arm around her shoulders again, forcing herself to stand. Her legs threatened to buckle, but she pushed forward. Each step through the field felt like walking a tightrope stretched across fire. One stumble and everything would burn. Behind them, faint voices carried through the night. The enemy had found the trail. Her mind raced. She needed cover, a road, anything. Then faint against the horizon, she saw it. The silhouette of an old farmhouse. Roof collapsed, windows shattered, walls leaning but still standing. A skeleton of a home. It wasn't safety, but it was shelter. She whispered to Miller, though she knew he couldn't hear, "Hold on just a little longer." The weeds brushed against her waist as she moved, dragging him step by step. Her shoulders screamed, her spine felt carved with knives. By the time she reached the farmhouse, her vision blurred at the edges. The door was gone. She pulled him inside, lowering him onto what used to be a kitchen floor. The tiles were cracked, dirt covering them. A family once lived here. She could almost hear the echoes, children laughing, chairs scraping, a mother humming while cooking. Now only ghosts. She collapsed beside him, back against the wall, rifle across her lap. For a few breaths she let herself close her eyes. But then Miller stirred. His lips moved. She leaned close, catching the faint whisper. "Why still here?" Her throat tightened. She had no strength for lies anymore. "Because you're all I've got left." His eyes opened a sliver. In them was pain, yes, but also something else. A question, a plea. "You can't," he breathed, "lose the mission." her hand clenched around his. "Don't you dare put that on me, not now." But deep down, she knew he was right. The drive pressed against her chest pocket, heavier with every heartbeat. Its contents could change everything, end wars, save thousands, maybe millions. And here she was, risking it all for one broken soldier. The conflict tore at her, duty against love, command against humanity. She wanted to scream, to rip the night open with her rage. Instead, she whispered, trembling, "I can't choose between you and them." He smiled weakly, blood on his teeth. "You already have." Her heart shattered. Before she could answer, movement outside snapped her back. Shadows shifted across the weeds, shapes, approaching slow, careful. The hunt had found them. Her pulse thundered. She checked her rifle, 3 rounds left, a knife on her belt, nothing more. Her eyes darted to Miller. His hand twitched toward her, but he was too weak to speak. She pressed her forehead to his, her voice breaking. "If I don't make it, promise me you'll fight to breathe. Just breathe. That's enough." He tried to smile, but his eyes closed again. She rose, body trembling, rifle in hand. She positioned herself at the broken window, breath fogging in the cold night. The first shadow entered the yard. She fired. The figure dropped. 2 more moved fast, taking cover. Bullets shattered what was left of the wall, spraying dust and splinters. She ducked, pressed against the dirt, ears ringing. Her chest heaved, sweat stinging her eyes. Another shadow crept closer. She fired again, missed. They returned fire, wood exploding beside her. Her last round slid into the chamber. Her hand shook, not from fear, from the crushing weight of what this bullet meant. 1 shot left, 1 choice. Her mind screamed, use it on the mission. Break through, run with the drive, save what can still be saved. Her heart whispered, use it to buy him another breath, to hold the line, to not let him die alone. Her jaw clenched, tears blurred her sight. She aimed, finger trembling on the trigger. A face flashed in her memory. Rodriguez laughing, James steady, the squad alive and whole. And Miller, younger, sharper, his hand steadying her rifle the first time she broke in training. "You don't aim with fear," he had told her then. "You aim with what you refuse to lose." Her breath steadied, her tears burned away. She pulled the trigger. The shadow fell, silence followed. Her rifle clicked empty. The night held its breath. Then more footsteps, more shadows circling. Her chest ached, her hands shook. No ammo, no way out, only the knife on her belt and the will in her chest. She glanced back at Miller, his body barely moving with breath. And she realized this was it, the edge, the final stretch. Her choice wasn't between the mission and him anymore. It was between surrendering and standing until the last breath. She pulled the knife free, crouching low in the dark. Her heartbeat slowed, her mind clear. "They'll have to go through me," she whispered again. And as the farmhouse walls shuddered under incoming fire, Adriana Cole prepared to give them the fight of their lives. The farmhouse walls groaned with each impact. Bullets chewed through wood, sending splinters into Adriana's skin. Dust filled her lungs. Miller lay behind her, barely clinging to breath, while outside, the enemy closed in. She crouched low, knife in her hand, rifle useless now. The steel felt small compared to the storm gathering at her door, but her grip was steady. Her heartbeat slowed. 1 breath. 2. The memory of Rodriguez's voice echoed. James's calm orders. Her brothers who had all fallen. And Miller, his hand still tangled weakly with hers, his voice earlier whispering that they hadn't died for a mission. They had died for her. So she would not let the story end here, not quietly, not forgotten. Shadows slid against the broken windows. A voice shouted orders. Boots pounded against the dirt outside. They thought she was broken, that she would collapse and hand herself over. They didn't know her. The doorframe shattered under the weight of their charge. She moved, fast, a blur of muscle and will. The first man through never saw the knife before it cut his throat. She spun, using his body as a shield, bullets tearing through flesh that wasn't hers. The second man screamed, firing wild. She rammed the blade into his gut, yanking hard as his weapon clattered to the floor. She grabbed it, an assault rifle, half a mag. She fired blind through the doorway, forcing them back. The recoil tore through her arms, her body screaming, but the rush of survival burned hotter than pain. Screams outside, shouts, then silence. Her chest heaved, sweat stung her eyes, her grip shook but didn't let go. She pressed her back to the wall, listening, every nerve stretched thin. The night held still, too still. Then crack. A sniper's shot shattered the window. The bullet grazed her shoulder, hot fire searing flesh. She dropped, gasping, hand pressed against blood. She crawled back to Miller, dragging the rifle. His eyes opened weakly, unfocused. "You still here?" he whispered. She laughed, broken and breathless. "Where the hell else would I be?" His lips curved in the faintest smile before fatting again. Another shout outside. They weren't done. They were regrouping. She leaned her forehead against the floor, tears spilling silent. She couldn't win this fight, not against their numbers, not with her body breaking and Miller slipping away. But maybe winning wasn't the point. Her hand pressed against her chest pocket, the drive, the last piece of what they had bled for. She thought of the squad, of the way Rodriguez used to hum songs when they marched, of James's steady hand pulling her out of fire, of all the names she could no longer say without choking. And she knew the mission wasn't just hers, it was theirs. If she couldn't walk it out of here, she had to make sure someone else could. Her eyes scanned the farmhouse. Broken beams, collapsed walls, the cellar door half hidden under rubble. An idea sparked. She dragged herself to it, pulling it open. The dark space yawned below, an old root cellar, dry, concealed. "Perfect." She crawled back to Miller, gripping his face. "Listen to me. I'm putting it all on you now. You breathe, you don't stop, you crawl if you have to, you make it out." He tried to shake his head, lips trembling. "No, not without you." Her tears fell harder. She pressed the drive into his chest pocket, her hands lingering there like she could will its weight into his soul. "You don't get a choice," she whispered. "They already took everyone else. I won't let them take you." His hand caught hers, weak but desperate. "Adriana." She pressed her forehead to his, silencing him with the fierceness of her eyes. "Live, that's your order." She dragged him into the cellar, covering him with debris, hiding the evidence of his breath. His eyes locked on hers, glassy with pain, with something unspoken. She forced herself to pull away. Because if she didn't, she would never leave him there. She climbed back into the ruin. The night outside hummed with menace. She could hear them spreading out again, circling, preparing for the final push. She stood in the center of the broken farmhouse. Alone, empty rifle dangling, knife gone, shoulder bleeding. And she felt calm. This was where her story ended. She whispered into the dark to the ghost she carried, "I'll hold them long enough, the rest is yours." The door exploded inward, floodlights burned her eyes, figures stormed in. She screamed, raw and defiant, and charged. Her empty rifle cracked across skulls. Her fists broke noses. She was a storm of desperation, of fury, of every drop of strength she had left. Bullets tore into her. She stumbled, fell to one knee. But she rose again, knife wrenched from the floor, driving into one more throat, one more chest. Blood filled her lungs. The room spun. She fell against the wall, sliding down, vision blurring into gray. The last thing she saw was the cellar door, hidden under rubble, silent, untouched. The last thing she felt was the weight of all she had carried finally leaving her chest. And the last thing she whispered, voice breaking into silence, was a promise. "Your story won't die with me." The farmhouse fell quiet. Outside, the night wind moved through the weeds, carrying the faintest echo of laughter, of voices, of soldiers who were no longer there, except in her. And below, hidden in the cellar, a man still breathed, weak, fragile but alive, with the drive pressed against his chest. Alive to carry what she could not. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.